As far as I'm concerned, sisterhood is powerful, it's worked for me, and I believe in it. One of my earliest and best mentors have been my father and my grandfather. And that was where the business about a commitment to community organizing came from. My grandfather was a Butlerite, member of the lodge, a member of the Moravian Church elders. And always in our house were people like Quentin O'Connor and the laborites around that time. And I would always be listening to these old men. Well, they were old to me. I was brought up in that kind of environment with a father who insisted that I could speak. I remember the first book my father brought for me was a book, a magazine. I was 3 years old, and it was called Chatterbox. And he said, "That's you," because we were encouraged to speak. I went from this exhibition to Bishop Anstey High School. Got myself into trouble in Bishop Anstey. And I was transferred to St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain. I suppose they couldn't send me on the street, so I went to St. Joseph's Convent, and I'm always grateful to Sister Frances Xavier, who took me into Port of Spain, and I did my, what would have been O-levels, from St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain. And then, because I didn't get the results that Frances Xavier thought I should have got, and by which time she was in San Fernando, and my father was living in Point Fortin, and me and my mother fell out, so I went to live with him in Point Fortin and went to school and did my A-levels in St. Joseph's Convent, San Fernando. Wow. So I'm the only person in Trinidad who's been to Bishop's Port of Spain, Convent, Port of Spain, and that, it is amazing. They talk about the old boys network. The Gold Girls network works very well, thank you. Housewives Association thought women had to become involved in politics. And in fact, in 1976, which the year was, 5 Housewives Association women ran contested elections in 4 parties, and myself as an independent in East Port of Spain, because all the people in East Port of Spain by now knew me. And very interesting, one we decided, just as now, one of the biggest issues that women had running for politics was money. So we actually created a fund that would be allocated to the women, regardless of which party they were in, and myself, to help them with their campaign funding. I have great satisfaction to see that in all of the parties in Trinidad and Tobago now, women are challenging for the political leadership, because that's the way you have to go. I say, you drop some women into a male environment, you don't just leave them and hope they can survive. They require your ongoing support, whether you agree or not. That's my position. Because without that support, they cannot do it. I see that as my role of supporting the women who want to engage in politics, regardless of which party, because I believe that they can make a difference if they have our support. After been struggling from 1988, we come to 2008, yes, no 9, and we think we have a policy that is ready to be approved by the government, and it is the budget day, and in the text that is prepared for the budget, it includes the line that said that the national gender policy was to be approved, and we are sitting in the public gallery when he calls Jo Newlands over to him and to tell her that on the basis of some 13-page letter that he had received from Anil Roberts' mother, that and I'm calling his name, her name, she's gone now, that he was going to withdraw that statement. And we saw him actually draw the pencil through the line on the paragraph. And all of our work had gone by a mere stroke of this man's pen. And we think people have to know that we had to know what we were prepared to do after that in respect of him. And you will always remember our baby doll character that says withdrawal is not a safe sex method. There was a methodology that we used, which I really think we should share with other people, about organizing and advocacy and lobbying. So for example, if there was an issue that we had to deal with, First, we got the information. Secondly, you got a meeting with the appropriate persons. Thirdly, if there are going to be 4 of them, 5 of us would go. We would always outnumber them. And the general approach was, we're not leaving. Here's the information. This is our position. We'd like to hear yours, but we're not leaving until we get a resolution. Alison White, who was one of our members of executive, persuaded us that this was a matter that needed attention in Trinidad and Tobago because the numbers of women breastfeeding was not sufficient. And of course, this way we worked was to go and do the research about how many women are breastfeeding, what are the impacts on women are having to afford breast milk. And we decided we would launch a breastfeeding campaign. This is Housewives Association. We gave Ample their first job to create a breastfeeding campaign for Trinidad and Tobago. And it was the most it is a campaign that has now become a model for campaigns throughout the world. I always talk about Errol Mahabir, because he was the minister responsible for gender and women's things then. And he gave us the money that we asked him for to pay for the campaign. International breastfeeding people heard about Trinidad and Tobago and came here. One day this little white guy arrived at my door, knock, knock. Will I be interested in joining this international movement? And this was the campaign of the international movement, the Nestle boycott. They were about to go to Geneva to the World Health Organization meeting. Would I go? And that was my first foray into international advocacy and lobbying. Here I was, leading all kinds of activism about, and hadn't done my pap smear. And I'm sitting in the PAHO office on Gillingham Avenue next to Veronica Roach, who was the Cancer Society representative. I said, Veronica, you know, this is me, June I'm talking about. Since February I have been bleeding and I have been meaning to come and tell you. February, Veronica took me straight up out of the chair down to Dr. Narayan Singh's office to arrange for the test for me to be done, and in a week I was in the hospital because this was a matter that required immediate surgery. If I had not spoken to Veronica that morning, I don't think I would have been here. My other cancer was much later, and I have to say as well, both of them occurred in periods where I was in tremendous personal stress.
Yes.
So either you're not looking after yourself and then you're in stressful situations and then you end up with cancer. The next one, again, another round of stress. I'm sitting in my office, I've lost about 10 pounds and having all kinds of strange things, but I'm not thinking about it. And the phone rings and Joni Williams is on the phone. Are you in your office? Yes. I'm coming to see you. What is she coming to see me about? She said, I haven't seen you for a long time, so I'll come to see you. I said, well, I'm not feeling so good. In fact, I've lost the weight and something is wrong. She as well picked me up, carried me down the road by the man to do the colonoscopy, and he did it and said, you are facing the second challenge of your life. I said, okay, all right. What we have to do, what we have to do. But again, you see, I'm not taking care of myself, but there are people out there
looking out for you,
looking after me. Yeah. So that experience, I was working in a secretariat in Georgetown, and some of my colleagues were involved in the Guyana Cancer Society. And there were two things about the Guyana women with cancer in Guyana, is that they didn't have the kind of services that we had in Trinidad. And even though there had been agreement between the two ministries of health, the process of getting them to Trinidad and Tobago for the treatment, and when they come for accommodation and transport back and forth to St. James and all that, needed to be organized. So I took on the responsibility for that. We found that there were women who were HIV positive who had skills. Mostly they had been working in factories and they could sew. So we went out and raised some money to buy some sewing equipment and materials for those women to start their own school shirt business. We would go out, and some of them would go out to the schools and get the school orders, and then we would make fund the material for them to make the school shirts, and when the school shirts were sold, they would refund the network the money that we put out. And for me, that was one of the best things projects that I have worked on, to see how these women, with the support of their families, could re-establish their livelihoods once there was a facilitating environment that was a safe place for them to work out of, the equipment that they required, and the support whenever it came up. One of the things I want to say is that what I am and what I've done has mainly been because of my relationships with women. Even though, like I said, I started with my father and my grandfather, but mostly it has been women who have been looking out for me and helping me and supporting me. It is true, governments come, governments go, minister come, minister go, but we have to go on.
Yes, yes.